Hey, what's up, everyone? We're here with Gardiner Bryant. He's known for his work at Hello Story, Heavy Element, and his own personal YouTube channel. So, Gardiner, tell me how you get all this stuff started. So how do you start building something? Where do you first begin?
Well, that's a great question. So when I first started, I actually started out doing just basic web forms for this company that needed back-end development for some stuff, and I quickly realized that I could do whatever I wanted. And one of the things that was really exciting to me was the idea of antique children's books. I love children's books, and I grew up around antiques. My grandparents love antiques, and so and I had a friend who had his dad had a bunch of antique children's books. So I just said, I want to put all this together, and I did Hello Story. Hello Story is a cool website where you can go read these children's books. And the first thing that I did when I created Hello Story was I wanted to make it so that people could go on there and add the translations into different languages. And so that was one of the first things that I focused on, was making sure that people could translate these books into other languages.
So what's the back end of that look like? What's that built on top of?
So I wrote that basically from scratch using PHP, MongoDB, and what's the other one? Just vanilla JavaScript. I think I'm using jQuery for two things, which will probably upset a couple people, but maybe not as much as using PHP would.
What? So were there any problems that you wanted to solve as you were coding?
Yeah, there was a couple things. I wanted to be able to have notifications, and if you know anything about NoSQL databases, they're not super optimal at joining tables. There aren't really tables, so joins and stuff like that are something that you sometimes have to handle in your own code rather than letting the database do that stuff. And so associating a user ID with a notification ID multiple times in a single notification query became a huge headache. So I ended up actually creating a way that handled that automatically in my own code. And I thought that it was a rather elegant solution. But it's probably too technical to go into the full details of it right now.
So are you building this yourself, or are you building with a friend? Are you on a dev team with something like this?
So this is something that I've built myself, almost entirely. Besides MongoDB, I've built basically everything else myself. And the only thing that I'm not doing is my best friend is actually handling actually uploading the books, making sure that all the metadata and stuff is complete. So he does the data management, and I do the rest, all the development.
Were there any aha moments that you had when you were trying to build something like this? Was there anything that you just were oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing ever? Or is it pretty much just rudimentary to you at this point?
Well, I mean, I don't particularly think of myself as an advanced coder. I mean, the thing that the aha moment for me wasn't actually working on Hello Story. It was understanding namespaces, objects, and classes and stuff like that. Once I understood that stuff, everything else kind of fell into place. I was oh, okay, I can keep the root namespace, if you will. I'm not good with the technical jargon, but the root namespace, you don't want to pollute that with all this extra stuff. So you can just say, oh, we're going to have anything that has to do with notifications live in its own namespace. And that way you won't accidentally overwrite variables that you didn't mean to. That was a major aha moment for me. Oh, and the other one was understanding actual HTTP protocol. When I wrapped my brain around HTTP, I was oh, everything starts to make sense once you get, and for me, the other thing about that is it's you'll be working on something you'll be looking at HTTP requests, and if you don't understand it, but you're like trying really hard to understand it, but something's just not clicking. There's a moment like you go to bed one day, you wake up, and then you're like, oh, I get it now. That's like the moment that like I love with programming, is it's like when stuff just doesn't work and then all of a sudden it just clicks in your brain, you know?
One thing that I've noticed is like, so you have those two guitars in the background. I feel like all these people that I've been interviewing have guitars in the background. I feel like all like the top coders are musicians for some reason. Maybe it's like that part of your brain, just like, you know, it's that same, you know, like half hemisphere of the brain or something is like, oh, is just like wired differently. I don't know. Just something like that I noticed. I mean, like that, like there's no question there. I'm just like, man, like, you know, everyone's like really good at playing guitar, I guess, that knows how to write code. Or like painting or something. I don't know. I feel like, you know.
The interesting thing about like programming is like people think that it's like this like highly technical, like math intensive thing, and for me, like it's not at all. Like I suck at math. My roommate can testify just how bad I am at math. But for me, what clicks, what makes the most sense is that programming is like language arts. It's like writing poetry. Like for me, when I'm programming, I'm activating like the language center of my brain, you know, and music kind of does the same thing. Like it's activating that part of my brain. So I think there's like a correlation. I mean, and I'm not trying to denigrate the computer scientists who are out there and they're really good at math at all. But like for me, when I'm coding, it's all about writing poetry. It's all about creativity. It's like making a puzzle. It's like building a puzzle as you're taking the photograph. That's what it is for me.
So I take it that you're like self-taught coding, right? Or did you go to school for it?
I'm entirely self-taught.
Okay, good. So then that's a perfect thing for my next question. Is like, what do you suggest other people do if they're trying to learn how to code? Like, what's like, like, you know, is it building projects? Is it being part of a dev team? Is it, you know, like contributing to, you know, things that, like what's your big, where did you get the most growth from?
For me, it was about finding a computational problem or like a programming problem that I was passionate about solving, and living and breathing solving that problem. For a long time, I worked at a company, and like I said earlier, I started out doing just like very basic. Well, when I first started programming, I was actually in high school, and MySpace was a thing. And so like when I first started writing any kind of code, it was like doing MySpace profiles for my friends, you know, like changing, like doing the CSS and stuff. And when I was actually homeschooled, and so I was able to like do that for like what you know, as my math class. So I taught myself the basics.
BeaconBot said like that same exact thing, is that he first learned to code through making MySpace pages. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Like, and that makes sense for me too. Like my first experience of writing code was creating like a MySpace, you know, like HTML, you know, short little snippets, just trying to change like the color on like my wallpaper.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that was also my first taste of like running my own business, because like I made money. I was charging my friends to develop MySpace profiles for them. And that was a lot of fun. And I remember like spending the first like $75 that I ever made, working for myself on a new graphics card for my PC. And I was like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. The largest like growth though was when I got hired to do like WordPress. Like I was doing like WordPress. I was managing a WordPress blog for a company. And as I was learning more and more about PHP doing WordPress, I then was able to like start developing software that was solving problems for the company. They were having issues with like basically everything was written on paper. And so what I was doing was like, you know, if they had a piece that came in damaged from the shipping company, they would just fill out a piece of paper and then take a picture with a cell phone and then write down the picture name on the piece of paper, and then the office manager would have to come get the phone and like dump the pictures onto his computer and associate the thing with the report. I'm like, that is wrong. That's the wrong way to do it. And I solved the problem by creating a web form that just let you upload a picture and fill out the form in the same place. And solving those problems for that company was what really was able to help me learn so much about programming.
So is that how you choose which YouTube video to make each week? Is it like, you want to get better at, doing this stack, so let's just make an episode around that so that by the end of next week, I'm now like a semi-pro with that? Is that kind of like where you go with it? Or you only choose YouTube content that before you start writing the script?
Most of the time, when it comes to the stuff I do on Linode, I don't even write a script. I just kind of, I'll like read like the documentation and then just go for it. But if I'm doing stuff from my channel, I typically will write a script out. And the thing is, like, determining what I do is like just a spur of the moment thing. I'm like, that sounds interesting, I'm going to do that. Or this news really irritates the crap out of me, so I'm going to like have a blustery opinion on YouTube.
So what are some of like the future episodes that you want to cover on? So for those who don't know, Garner is one of the Lenode developer advocates, or as Garner would say, his friendly developer advocate, right? So, yeah. So what are some of the future episodes that you're maybe like thinking about tackling, or that, that some viewers can expect?
Yes. So, I've been thinking about doing Minecraft, like starting up a Minecraft server. There's a lot of demand for something like that. One of the other things I was thinking about doing is setting up a mail-in-a-box server. Mail-in-a-box, if you're not familiar, is a like full-featured mail server, like email server. And if you know anything about managing an email server, it's a pain in the ass. But Mail-in-a-Box makes it really pretty convenient, pretty simple, and pretty easy. So I really like Mail-in-a-Box, and that one's actually been a couple weeks in the works, because like I manage a Mail-in-a-Box server for myself, and setting it up on Linode isn't just like a one-click app thing. It's a more in-depth. It's a more in-depth one. Yeah. Okay.
So you're a big open source guy, right? I mean, like your shirt right there that it says open source.
Open source.
So do you contribute to any like open source things?
Oh, well, I love open source. And like the imposter syndrome that I have keeps me from like contributing code upstream, just because I feel like I don't know. Do you know what imposter syndrome is, right? Where you're like, you feel like you don't know anything about what you're doing. So it's a bit of shyness too. Like I feel like, I feel shy about contributing my code. It feels like the stories that I write or the poems that I write, it's like I don't want to share this because I'm too afraid of the criticism I might receive. But I do love open source. It's one of my favorite concepts in the world. And it's not just open source, it's free and open source software is what I'm really passionate about. Like free software, open source licenses, the viral nature of like the GPL. I just that is like the ethical way to compute, and everything else is kind of invalid to me.
And like people don't need to think that free software means that you have to be poor to write the software. There are a lot of companies, like I can think of like Red Hat, or there are many others that have free and open source software, but that they're able to monetize it in other ways. So it's a thing that you can still contribute to the community. And like, you don't have to like just start giving away your work and, be living on peanuts. It's totally a viable career.
Yeah. Right. And like, you don't have to contribute just code either. Like you can give feedback and file bug reports and do other things that help the developers, like the maintainers of the project, actually solve problems. Like if you can think of an awesome feature that you want to have added to your favorite digital audio workstation, you can say, hey, this is an idea that I had, or this is a bug that I had that kind of hinders me from doing the thing I want to do. And, if you're following the community guidelines for how to actually file these reports, you're actually helping to improve the quality of the software.
So how did you find Linode? Because, I mean, was it through building your first Minecraft server? Was it, where did that kind of connection happen?
So Lenode, I actually was, it was through the company that I used to work for. I had written the web form that I talked about, that helped with the reporting, on a old PC that I just had running headless Linux. Right. And, at a certain point, that wasn't good enough for what we needed to do. And because I was depending on MongoDB, I couldn't deploy the code on the shared hosting that we had through, I think it was HostGator or something. So I went around and was asking some of my Linux friends, what's the most Linux and open source friendly virtual private host, right? And almost everyone universally said Linode. And Linode, I quickly created a company account for it, and fell in love with the cloud manager and how easy it was to deploy software or my own code on there. So I thought it was really great, and I've been a customer ever since.
Yeah. So talk to me about Heavy Element for a minute.
Yeah. Well, Heavy Element is my company that I founded late last year, and we're a new media production company. It kind of encompasses Hello Story and my channel and some of the other projects that my company is working on. We develop websites. We do branding, management. We do video production, and everything that can be done on Linode is done on Linode.
Wow. So it's the world's first Linux video production company.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. All right.
I think there might be other Linux production companies out there, but yeah, I love what I do. Yeah.
So give me an example. If the software doesn't exist, do you build it from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, so we built a thing for one of my clients right in town here, where they have a vinyl sticker printing business, and we built them a thing that ties into the Shopify API, which is what they use for order processing, and it generates all the stickers that they need for their vinyl printer. And they didn't have anything like that, and I couldn't find anything like that on the web already, so I just built it for him, and it runs on Linode, and it's a lot of fun. The fact that it wasn't finished, and I could see how many times he had pinged requests for this for each document. I was okay, he's using it already, and it's not even done. So I was really happy that he was using it.
Okay, so I guess that wraps it up.
Yeah, I had fun. Let's do this again.
Cool. Thanks, man.